Hello and welcome to this episode of Let's Talk Death. I'm Kiri Meyer.
And I'm Andy McNeil.
And we are thrilled to be your hosts for these conversations. Let's Talk Death is brought to you by Heal Grief, which is a social support network creating community after a loved one has died. Everything we do is inspired by our core belief that no one should ever need to grieve alone.
And our goal with this program is to have a friendly chat with a variety of people, leaders in the field, bereaved people, community members, so we can help normalize and educate our Heal Grief community. We are pleased to welcome Heidi Herzon to our show. Heidi is the executive producer for television and commercials. She produces content for integrated digital and traditional broadcast production and advertising, branded entertainment, television, feature film, and music video programming. She is also a dedicated grief advocate for Heal Grief and the Actively Moving Forward program.
Welcome, Heidi. We're so glad to have you joining us today.
Thank you. I'm very honored to be asked to participate.
Thank you. You are such a wonderful advocate for us and for Heal Grief and AMF. And so I'm wondering if you'd be willing to actually kind of start off by sharing why you connect so deeply with AMF's mission.
I'd be happy to. So this is actually still new to me as far as sharing my story. And because of my connection with AMF and Heal Grief, it has helped me on a personal level to connect with my story, acknowledge my story, and share my story. So Fran Solomon, the founder of Heal Grief, is a very dear friend of mine for many years, and is a perfect example of, after 12 years, had no idea that I had experienced a crisis in college where my father had passed away after being very ill for 3 years. And it was within the first 3 months of beginning my freshman year. And I think my roommate and maybe one other friend in the entire dorm, in the entire school, knew, other than someone even at the registrar's office. And that was that. You didn't discuss it. You didn't share the story. I continued for a semester, not very successfully. And spring, it's a quarterly system, and spring quarter, I realized I was not functioning and not participating in my classes, not getting anything out of it, not enjoying myself. What was interesting in my conversation with Fran was she immediately recognized everything I was saying and said, you didn't give yourself permission to enjoy life because you were mourning. And that was an aha moment, literally, for me. And that was only a few years ago. And that's true. So that has begun my very recent journey in coming to terms with grief and living with grief. It's not going to go away. It's going to be something I'm going to carry with me in a new way, and hopefully in a way that I can appreciate and cherish in a positive way.
Yeah. So thinking back when you were in college, bringing up your story, that it sounds like that for so long was like you didn't bring up, and obviously people didn't know, but just thinking back on that, what do you think would have been helpful in your situation then? What do you feel like you needed as a young adult at that time?
Well, I think you don't know what you need, number one, and that's critical. And even the support group you have, and then the friends, and even in the few years, as a young adult, after college and in my career, and while you do share with somebody, oh yeah, my father had passed away when I was 18, nobody really knows how to respond to that. They feel like you want to just move on in the conversation, in which you probably do.
Yeah.
But that is just the way that it has been. So it kind of guides how you yourself cope and deal with it. And you do just kind of compartmentalize.
Yeah.
And I think that had it been a much more prevalent conversation in my daily life in college, I would have been able to absorb it more and live with those feelings, hold those feelings, and still be able to exist within the dialectic of grief and still wanting to pursue all these new experiences and joys of college.
Right.
That dialectic is something that is learned.
Yeah.
And I would have appreciated, at least at the minimum, hearing other students who are struggling, even though we wouldn't have known what to call it, how to label these, difficulties and these emotions. And I think even that, like speaking with a counselor or other professionals who would be able to help me label the emotions. I think that is something that doesn't get developed when you do suffer a loss at an early age. You're
Yeah.
not able to identify the multiple emotions. It becomes a little undeveloped, is what I've experienced.
Yeah.
Heidi, I just want to thank you, first of all. I was a grieving child, a grieving teenager, a grieving young adult. And I think it's just, the more that we hear really courageous people speak up about things that we think nobody else has to deal with, whether it's like, oh, everybody else talks about their grief, but I don't, or whatever those barriers are. I just want to thank you, because I think it's really empowering for other people to hear your story and connect with it on whatever level that they have in their lives. Cause I definitely connect on my own level, but I just want to thank you for sharing that, because it's not always easy, but it definitely takes some of that loneliness away, especially for, I feel like, grieving young adults. So thank you for that.
Yes. And I think that you don't recognize it is a form of loneliness, and loneliness is seen as a deficiency or a negative thing, and learning that no, that's and one of the other things in the recent therapy and things you do to address other things that happen, milestones in your life or crises and events, you can learn to take it back. And one of the things is that you're experiencing the emotion is not you. And that was a big, very recent lesson I'm learning to hold and live with, but that we are experiencing these feelings within the moment. And that would have been a very helpful perspective, and something I think young people could understand and incorporate at that age. So I think that this is, it will shape you, but it is not going to determine everything who you are.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because there's so much more parts to who we are. That is a piece, and it might be a part that's influenced things. I find it interesting, and Kiri, even you recognizing, hey, I wasn't alone, but hearing you talk, Heidi, about, and I don't want to assume, but you may or may not have known anyone else going through what you were going through, or may not have even known that maybe they were going through it, but no one was talking about it. So there
I don't think there was anyone. Now that I think back, I honestly don't think there was one person in my group. I don't even think I knew of anyone, even not directly in a friend group, but even just a fellow student. I don't think I knew anybody. You're right.
Which is interesting when you look at the statistics of it. And statistically, we know that a third of college students are grieving an immediate family member's death. I have a friend of mine who was telling me the story. She actually started a new company and was in the newspaper, and someone who she is one of her closest friends in college. They went to class together. They hung out in the same group. She shared her story about the death of her mom when she was young, when she was a teenager. And they had gone to college together. They spent all this time together. And he reads this article in the newspaper, calls her up after 20 years of never talking and said, "Are you kidding me? Both my parents died when I was a teenager. How can we go through college together and have never shared this with each other?" Like,
Right.
so I think it is a story that we hear often. And I'll back up, like Kiri said, there are folks who maybe are even watching this episode who are identifying and saying, "Wow, you know, who was it that I was in college with that I had no clue, that they were going through this?" And it really does say something to college students even today, about that sense that we feel alone. We're probably surrounded by people who do get it, but unless we're able to communicate about that, how will we know? So.
Well, and another little theory I'm working on is I do think there's a generational shift, and my generation, at least in my experience, we weren't really asked, how are you feeling today? It wasn't feelings, you had them, but it didn't dictate your actions. You kind of did what you had to do. And I do find the youth of today very connected and very much looking to emotions as a part of um, determining their action and positive action. And the empathy that is procured in the youth of today is far different, I think, than, I mean, we had causes and we had determination, but that interpersonal empathy, I don't think was as developed as I'm seeing signs of now. So I think there's a lot of hope.
And I think that's a really good point. Mental health is a huge topic these days that I feel like is getting a little bit less stigmatized. And I hope grief is thrown in there as well,
I
because grief is not a mental health disorder or issue, but it impacts our overall well-being. So I love that kind of inspirational kind of push there of, yeah, things are changing. Let's keep them changing. Let's talk about this. Let's not have it be this thing that has to sit in a corner, because I don't think that does very well for our overall health. And like you were saying, you have to deal with it at some point. It doesn't just go away.
exactly.
So, like, why not deal with it now and find support, so we don't have to, keep hearing this story that everybody's story is different, but it has these common threads that, really aren't necessarily helpful for us to feel really confident in things going forward.
Yeah, I think you're right. Destigmatizing grief and the ancillary effects and I don't want to say they're not deficiencies, but challenges
Yeah.
that one carries throughout is so important. And I agree. I'm hopeful that because the nature of our culture today and socially, it's let's get it out there and let's talk about it. So I agree with you. I hope that grief, and I think grief is actually getting a huge audience now
Yeah.
and much more awareness, which is what I'm particularly dedicated to with working with Heal Grief and AMF.
Yeah. So Heidi, we only have a few minutes left, but I'm wondering, as we kind of close our conversation out, and certainly acknowledging that everyone's grief journey looks different. We get that. But is there any just big life lesson that you feel you've learned through your own grief, that you would want to share with folks who might be watching this?
Still learning. Still learning every day. I would say something I had just alluded to earlier. learning to carry it with you because it's not going to go away. And it's okay to enjoy your life, and the big word and feel sad at the same time, or missing or lonely for someone you've loved dearly, who who could guide you, or just even enjoy what it is you're enjoying, and be happy with sharing your happiness. So it's important to do that. And I do think it's important to try to keep that person's memory alive for your children, your other family. Talking more about the stories. You don't remember a few things, asking others who might have been present, do you remember this? Do you have anything to say? I think actively seeking out stories from others about the loved one who's no longer here. I think that that is helpful, because I do think that some of the anxiety or loneliness, or the feelings, whatever we're going to label them, still working on that too, is the fact of the unknown. I don't remember some of the stories. I don't remember all of the, at 18, you might not have spoken, if it's a parent, you might not have spoken to the parent about big topics, big issues.
Yeah.
And you want to know what they would have thought about that. So you reach out to, their contemporaries, their peers. Have they ever talked about this particular issue with you, and what was their opinion on it? So I think that that's part of what we're grieving, is we're grieving the inability to have their input.
Yeah.
And so discovering what might have been their philosophy or their thoughts on something is I find very helpful in filling the hole, put it that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, very much so.
Definitely. Well, Heidi, we would just want to thank you again for being our guest here at Let's Talk Death, and for being so courageous and sharing your story with us today.
Thank you. I hope it was helpful.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Yes, and for those who are viewing this episode, if you would like to learn more about Heal Grief, please visit healgrief.org. You can also learn more about actively moving forward a Heal Grief program by visiting the same site, healgrief.org.
Let's Talk Death episodes will air monthly, so make sure to sign up on healgrief.org to receive your newsletter for a link to next month's episode.
And thank you for joining us. We will see you next time on Let's Talk Death.